think we will kick it off. I see we still got people signing in here, but we'll kind of get the beginning of this started, and before we get into the meat of it here. But my name is Doug Green. I am the Fire Safety Manager for Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District. Thank you all for, it looks like we got somebody waiting in the room there, Julie. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I know it's a beautiful day outside, and probably not the easiest thing to pull yourself in out of that, but this is important information, and we really appreciate, again, you signing in and watching this and kind of trying to get informed about what we're doing in the Sisters Country to prepare ourselves for the upcoming wildfire season. As most of you know, we try to do this every spring. Obviously, we used to do it in person in the past, which was really nice to meet everyone face to face and be able to present that way. But obviously, with COVID, last year and this year, we've had to do it virtually. Hopefully, by next year, we'll be able to again see everyone in person and do this not virtually. But this year, we're going to kind of push through it this way, and I think you guys will get a lot of the same information as we gave without it or in-person presentation. So we got a lot of folks here who are going to present all the way from kind of what we're doing locally with the Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District and how we're prepping for wildfire season. We're going to talk about, we have folks here from the Forest Service who are going to talk about what they're doing to mitigate the wildfire risk around the Sisters Country, and also kind of what their predictions are for this summer with the best modeling they have. We have some people here from the Sisters that volunteer in Fire Corps who are going to share what they're doing to help mitigate the wildfire risk in Sisters. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about, thanks Julie, talk a little bit about what's going on at the state and regional level with some of the wildfire legislation that's coming down from the state and from the county and how it may affect us here locally. You know, I guess before we kick this off, being in the fire service, you know, we've known that Central Oregon, especially, but the whole state has been at wildfire risk for a long time. You know, and we've really felt like we've dodged that bullet for a lot of years. I mean, we've definitely had fires here, but nothing large and catastrophic like we saw last fall. Part of that's because the fire districts around here are really good at what they do, and we work with really good partners at the state and federal level who are really good at what they do, and we're able to knock down a lot of those starts before they get big and become devastating fires. Some of it has to do with luck, whether the weather or other things. We're able to jump on things at certain times, and we've got lucky. So, but we've known that risk is out there, and we've been kind of preparing for that and trying to mitigate that risk from a city level all the way up to a federal level for many years. And like I always say, it's not if a wildfire is going to hit your community, it's when that wildfire is going to hit your community. And for us, it's making sure that we mitigate those risks in a way so that when that wildfire hits the Sisters community, that we can absorb that blow and not have it have devastating economic and personal effects on our community. So that's why we look at ways to mitigate that, because we know it's going to happen here. You know, and then as you know, the perfect storm hit last fall. We had huge devastating fires on the west side of the Cascades, which was a little bit of a surprise since usually the highest risk is on this side of the mountains. But in all, I think we burned about 1.3 million acres. About 5,000 homes and businesses were lost last fall. I think there were 9 fatalities, and about 1/8 of Oregonians were under evacuation orders in those fires last fall. So obviously it was a wake-up call. And again, we knew it was coming, and we know that situations like that are going to happen again. And so that's why we do what we do. And again, we appreciate you guys joining because not only does it take efforts from the high level, the forests around us, but as importantly, if not more importantly, it takes efforts from the homeowners and the community members to mitigate the risk around their communities, around their homes. So that being said, a couple housekeeping things here. We're going to try to keep everyone on mute for now. It just keeps the background chatter a little bit at bay while we try to present this. There is a way, if you need to feel like you need to say something, there's a way you can raise your hand, and we'll try to keep down at the lower left. We'll try to keep an eye on that. And if you have questions or comments, there is a chat box up at the upper right. You can click that, type your questions, type your comments. And we're going to ask that you keep your questions till the end. We're going to leave some time at the end where we can kind of try to answer most of those questions if we can. That way, again, we keep this presentation moving smoothly with a minimal of disruption. So I think that's the major housekeeping stuff, unless Julie has anything more to add on that. But with that, again, thank you all for being here. We're going to start off with Julie Spohr, who's going to talk about a little bit about what we do, again, at a community level to mitigate that risk with our burning regulations and some new things that are coming around. So, Julie, it's all you.
Thank you. See if I can get my menu bar to pop back up over here. So I'm Julie Spohr. I'm with the Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District. As Doug said, I'm the Executive Assistant and Public Information Officer. And I just wanted to go over really quickly some stuff about outdoor debris burning and our online permitting system. So for those of you who may not know, outdoor yard debris burning typically closes dusk on May 31st locally. That is the plan as of right now for this year. With that being said, we typically don't shut down recreational fires. Those would be your s'mores or backyard propane, ceremonial type burns, that sort of thing. We did have to do that last year, or we chose to do that last year during the fires, but generally speaking, that doesn't normally happen. But yard debris burning will end on May 31st at dusk. The Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District moved to an online permitting system in the spring of 2019. The old permits that used a number, I think they started with FP, those are no longer valid. So if you know of people that have those, you might suggest that they call us or jump online and register for a new permit. The online permit system you can access via the district's website. That's this address up here, sistersfire.com, and it's called Public Fire Safety. It's also available in the App Store, so if you have a smartphone, you can download that app either in the Apple or Google Play Store, and it's pretty slick on the phone. There's a quick registration process that you have to register your address, email, phone number, all that sort of stuff. And then once you create that account, you'll utilize that system to report your burns each day that you plan to burn. So like the old system where you called on the phone, had to listen to a message to find out if it was a burn day or not, now you can just jump on your online account or on your phone to that app, and it will tell you right away with a message whether or not burning's open or closed, and you can schedule your burns there. You can schedule multiple days. So for your residents and your HOAs or Firewise communities that maybe are vacation here but have a home or live out of the area for the most part of the year, when they come in, they can register those burns ahead of time. So they can register as many burns as they want. If they know they're going to be here, you know, Mother's Day weekend every year, they can register those in advance. The only thing that we ask is that because conditions change and the fire department typically makes their decision on whether or not they're going to open or close burning the following day, that happens after 8 p.m. usually the night before. And so people need to jump back on and check that burn status in the morning. We do try to send out an alert if we know that we're going to close it in the evening. We send out a text alert to our users within the system that lets them know that it's been closed. And then as a last resort, for people that don't have internet access or cell phone service, we have a lot of accounts out in Jefferson County and Camp Sherman that have trouble with internet or cell service. And I would just suggest that they still call in, talk to somebody here in the office. We'll get them registered in the system with all the details that they would normally register with. And that way they're in there, and then they can call the old burn line number that's still in existence. That's this 549-2333. And they can just let us know that they're registered within the system, they don't have internet access, and they're letting us know that they're burning that day. They can leave a name and phone number. And that allows us to log their burns in for them within the system. So obviously safety during open burning season is of the utmost importance to us. And this system that we went to, this online burn permit system, allows our on-duty staff to monitor who's burning on a daily basis. So this map over here is just an example of, this is just a screenshot that I took showing the permits that were scheduled for today. So I went in and scheduled a burn. You can see that our shift commanders can jump in and they can click on these little blue dots, and those are all registered burns for the day. So if somebody happens to call our station and says, hey, my neighbor's burning and I don't think he's burning correctly, or I don't think he has a permit or whatever, our shift commanders, without having to roll a vehicle out the door, can log in and say, oh, I see there is a burn registered on Bitterbrush and looks like they're good to go. And if there's more of a need to go out there and actually talk to the homeowner, then they can. But this system also allows us to immediately send text notifications to users of the system. So if there's changing conditions that happen midday, say we started the day and allowed burning, and then some crazy weather event has happened midday and we feel like it's not safe anymore to burn, we can send a message to all users of the system and let them know, hey, we would love it if you extinguished your debris pile and that sort of thing. It also allows us, like I said, to check on burn compliance for active permits and push out important fire safety information. Last thing for me, and again, if you have questions about any of this, we will have a question and answer thing at the end, but you can also throw a question in the chat and we'll try to answer those as we go as well. For me, last part is I just wanted to mention that we did a pretty big renovation on our website this winter, first part of the year, tried to make it a little more user-friendly, and probably for HOAs, Firewise communities, citizens of the district, the major things that we get phone calls about are going to be these big red buttons down here. So hopefully that makes things easier for people. And then the menus up at the top, obviously you can access a lot more information, but services and programs is probably a big one that a lot of people of the district would be interested in. That's where you can get online and order an address sign, those green or brown reflective signs, as well as scheduling a wildfire home safety assessment. You can find out information about smoke alarms, just a lot of the programs that generally the normal citizen in the district would find useful. So I think that's it for me. Just like I said, give us a call at the station if you need help with the burn permit system and any of the services, as I said, on the district website, or anything we can do here in the office. Just give us a call. You're probably going to talk to me when you call in. And I'm here full-time, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Tim Craig.
All right, thanks, Julie. So as Julie said, my name is Tim Craig. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations. And what that means is, Doug introduced himself as the Fire and Life Safety Manager. Doug is the guy that we call when we have issues and questions and concerns before things go bad. I'm the guy that they call when things have already gone bad. So essentially, it's my job to manage the firefighters and the responders who are going out at the time of an incident, so that everybody kind of understands what my role is here in the organization. Just yesterday, we got together with about 15 area fire managers throughout the Sisters Country area, from the Cloverdale Fire District, Black Butte Ranch Fire District, Sisters Fire District, as well as the Oregon Department of Forestry and the U.S. Forest Service. And we had a discussion yesterday that really was pretty fantastic, that brought together all of the operational managers who are going to be responding to incidents throughout the course of this summer. And you'll hear from some of those operational managers from the Forest Service today. We really have a pretty spectacular working relationship between those 5 agencies. And, you know, we've taken a tack that's a little bit unique, and that is that within certain parameters, we'll essentially drop our boundary jurisdictions and we'll go and respond to the calls as necessary. My philosophy on fighting a fire on Forest Service ground is that if we can keep it on Forest Service ground and we can deploy our resources there to keep it from moving into our fire district, then we have protected our fire district. And the Forest Service has taken the same kind of operational tact as we have, in that we're not worried about that initial jurisdictional responsibility. We're going to go and fight the fire and deal with the incident to try to keep it as small and manageable as we possibly can. Now, of course, the Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District is also responsible for EMS. So we have ambulances that we need to concern ourselves with as well. So we'll engage kind of to a limited extent to help keep a fire in check when it's outside of our fire district boundaries, and then do our best to hand that off to the Forest Service or to the Oregon Department of Forestry, depending on who has the jurisdiction out in the woods. But we work incredibly well together between the 5 agencies, the 3 local fire districts, and then the 2 wildland agencies. So this year, we are going to have our usual staffing, typical daytime staffing of 5 in the main station, as well as our volunteer companies coming out of the Squaw Creek Canyon Estate Station, as well as the Camp Sherman Station. And we have a very robust volunteer response that comes out of the main station here in Sisters as well. And in addition to that, within the fire districts, we have Black Butte Ranch responding to incidents with us, as well as Cloverdale. And the 3 districts tend to respond together on just about every incident that's bigger than just a single smoke kind of, or an ambiguous smoke report. So we're able to, through good cooperation and good operational preparedness and these pre-season operational preparedness meetings that we have, we're able to coordinate our efforts very closely. We can communicate directly from engine to engine across the jurisdictions and across the responsibilities by standardizing our communications. And we're going to deploy our resources in a way that is going to be as effective and efficient as we possibly can. So, you know, with that, I think that's really just about it for an operational update for this year. We are prepared and anticipating a drier, warmer, and potentially a more volatile fire season this year, and our firefighters are well prepared for that. We're training on a regular basis, and again, we're working with our cooperators to provide a good operational response for the summer. With that, that's what I've got for operations. I'd like to now pass it off to James Osborne, the Fire Management Officer for the Cascade Division out of the Sisters Ranger District.
Thanks, Chief Craig. Make a sound check. You got me, Julie?
Yeah, we got you. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay. All right, good evening, folks, and thanks, Chief Craig, for the introduction. And yeah, definitely a group that's fairly unique in the Sisters Country area. Like Chief Craig mentioned, we have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, where we all work together, but we actually, you know, all like each other and talk regularly, go mountain biking, do all sorts of things together. Just like any, you know, strong working team. So thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me tonight. We'll do a couple other introductions that I want to do so folks get a face with a name, and then we'll get into the quick presentation from us. So again, my name is James Osborne. I'm the Division Chief or Fire Management Officer on the federal title side for the Cascade Division. The Cascade Division is a service first location that's under the umbrella of Central Oregon Fire Management Service. That is the federal agencies in and around Sisters Country. So the U.S. Forest Service, the Department of, or the Bureau of Land Management, the Deschutes Field Office, which is kind of in the Klein Buttes area. You'll see a map momentarily. And then the Crook River National Grasslands, which is administered by the Ochoco National Forest. So I'd like to introduce my battalion chief for suppression, Vince Grace, first. And then I'll introduce somebody else after that. So Vince, can you pop up and just give a quick introduction?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, James. Hi, everybody. My name is Vince Grace, Battalion Chief 4-1 on my regular duties. I'm filling in this season as Division 4 Chief behind James Osborne, currently speaking. So appreciate the introduction, and if anybody has any questions or thoughts, I'll be here at the Sisters Ranger Station available. So thank you.
Okay, and then I'd like to introduce Andrew Myra as well. He's the battalion chief in charge of fuels for the Sisters Ranger District. So Andrew, can you give a quick introduction? Maybe not. If he comes online, you'll be able to see his face after the presentation. But nonetheless, as Vince mentioned, in the federal government, we do a thing called a detail or a time-limited promotion. And so it's a 4-month stint where you go and you tackle somebody else's job while somebody else tackles your job. So I've been bumped to Bend for the summer to act as the Deputy District Ranger on the Bend Fort Rock Ranger District, starting basically effective now, and have been there for a couple weeks. And then I'll be back late August, early September. And so Vince Grace will be acting behind me, fulfilling all roles, fire operations and fuels management. And then we'll be reverting back to that battalion chief position once I return. So thanks, Vince, for hopping in and taking over for me while I'm gone. So the ongoings and whatnot for what we've got going in the Forest Service and federal land side, we'll get started. So this is the boundary. Folks can see that the Cascade Division, Sisters is right here in the center. We've got Bend down here to the south and east, Redmond in this location. So we have all federal lands inside this boundary, this is a Forest Service location. We have grasslands up in the north east location along the Deschutes River. And then the BLM ground that is west of Redmond. And then as Tim mentioned, we work really closely together. All the white ground that you see on this map is Oregon Department of Forestry protection. And so we definitely intermingle and go closest resource, which is the first available fire engine or fire suppression resource to respond in a closest forces concept. So it doesn't matter what color of the land or what color of the vehicle in terms of jurisdiction, responsibility, we respond based on the closest resource and help each other out. This is our org. It's been fairly stagnant for the last number of years, but we like to go over it anyway. So we have one fire management officer, which is myself, and then Vince Grace acting for the summer. 2 assistant fire management officers or battalion chiefs. Again, one being suppression and one being fuels. We have a few other additional miscellaneous overhead, fire operations supervisor or prevention tech that does a lot of our educational things with the public and events, and then 2 fuels techs that assist Andrew with prescribed burns, mowing and mastication, and all the fuels work that's happening in and around Sisters Country. 2 fire engines, a Type 3, which is your larger engine, 625 gallons, generally has 7 people on it. And then a Type 6, which is more your brush rig, if you see that, which is more of your, your Dodge 550, Chevy Ford 550, with 325 gallons on the back. So you see those running around. We also have a 10-person wildfire module, which is known as a 10-person hand crew. 2 fire lookouts, Black Butte, which is staffed by permanent seasonal folks that we employ through the summer. We've had a long-standing duo with a main fire lookout and a relief fire lookout, decade plus. And then we also have Green Ridge, which is staffed by volunteers that overlooks the Metolius Basin. COVID's still a thing, so we're still working to protect our firefighters and limit exposure so we can continue to respond, you know, and tackle incidents in and around sisters, as well as across the nation. So social distancing, mask wearing, and now that the vaccinations are online, we're continuing to get folks vaccinated and have a good group of our folks already vaccinated and well through that process. Managing wildfires, you know, there's still a pause per se for multiple objectives, meaning resource benefit in terms of, you know, folks generally hear the let it burn policy. There is not a let it burn policy on federal land, but there are opportunities to manage fires for multiple objectives. That is still paused, and we'll get into a little bit more managing fire here due to safety and risk and things of that nature as we get to the presentation. Firefighter safety is still the utmost and foremost, you know, as we respond to everything and anything that we get called to.
James, can I interrupt for a quick question?
Yeah.
James, sorry about that. I want to interrupt for a quick question. If you could pop back one slide there. I came into Central Oregon with lots of fire service experience, but not a whole lot of wildfire experience, and certainly not exposure to the federal system. Can you define for us what the difference is between a suppression assistant fire management officer and a fuels assistant fire management officer? Because our fuels AFMO is probably not dealing with gasoline and diesel fuel, right?
No, and yeah, good question. So we generally label it as fuels. So anything that is, you know, mitigation efforts, hazardous fuels reduction, thinning, prescribed burning, you know, mowing and masticating brush, thinning, etc. All of those sorts of type of activities that are hazardous fuels reduction are just labeled, you know, fuels. And we have basically a battalion chief, so an assistant fire management officer, that their sole responsibility in the program area they manage has to do with that hazardous fuels reduction piece of our mission. And then the suppression side is more of that that sort of operational fire suppression, has the fire engines, the workforce, basically, if you will, underneath them to manage incident response. And then those, you know, the one suppression AFMO and one fuels AFMO, they actually work real closely together and generally end up covering our duty officer response just based on their fire qualifications. And so it's interchangeable, but they do have their own areas of expertise and management that they oversee for those two locations. So hopefully that answers your question, Tim.
That's perfect. Thank you, sir.
So I was asked to do the fire year review based on what we saw last year, and I know a lot of folks are concerned for this year. And so we'll give a quick synopsis of what we saw last year and then get into this year. So a few photos on here. The one in the upper left corner is Green Ridge, and definitely all local fire. So Green Ridge. The one in the upper right corner is Lion's Head. You know, kind of early on, and then the big photo on the bottom, the column to the right is Beachy Creek, and the column to the left was Lion's Head, and that was after that big blow up day, you know, basically Labor Day. So this is the next morning, the day after Labor Day, when we saw those large fire growth. In terms of preparedness levels was 1 through 5, 5 being the highest or the most committed of resources across the nation. And then this diagram here shows kind of where we've been in terms of those predictive or preparedness levels, and when we've been at those that number of 5 per se, as you see 0 to 5 here on the left side of the axis, and then the dates and the longevity and average of why we've been at those preparedness levels throughout the last 10 years. So you can see up in this 2020 location, we were at preparedness level 5 for a very long period of time, probably more than average than we've seen, in the last number of years. There's been a few other years, 2018, 2014, but that was early or mid-season versus that latter part of the fall. Just a quick synopsis on kind of that climate for the season of fire season. What we generally call April till the end of September in the Northwest. Early season, we saw cool and wet periods through that 2020 fire season, and then persistent warmth and very low rainfall in that second half, which definitely boosted fire danger significantly. And then, we had a few lightning events, not anything more than we've normally seen, but we did have a few lightning-caused fires on the landscape when we had that historic windstorm that hit early September. And we had enough fire on the landscape that that windstorm pushed those fires dramatically, as we saw. Overall, the temperature and the precipitation graphs on the bottom, you can see overall the temperature was slightly above average for most of the Pacific Northwest, and then rain in Washington and Northwest Oregon eased drought late in fire season, but Southwest Oregon and much Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington remained quite dry. So, a bit of a bullseye down the Cascades where Sisters lies. Energy release component, or known as ERC, basically shows the energy release at the head of a fire and can tell you, how dry things are and how hot things are burning. Is kind of the layman's terms for it. So we model that throughout the year. What it shows is seasonality and field dryness for us. And so the ERC climbed from below average values early in the fire season of 2020 to well above average in early September. And you can see that climb here, and it peaked right about the big windstorm event. And then we got some rains after the fact, and we saw a rapid decline. In terms of the lightning strikes, 21,171 strikes were recorded in the geographic area from June through September, so Oregon and Washington. And that was basically 31% of average. And normally the average roughly for that 4-month period is 67,000 lightning strikes. Just in terms of some additional information, very dry trend observed July through August across the region. And in the first half of September, we saw very low minimum relative humidity, corresponding with overnight nighttime recoveries being very low. That's generally when we see our biggest fire growth around here, is when we have those hot days and we don't get that relative humidity recovery overnight. So if we have several days of low RH or relative humidity overnight, it just sets us up, and we're that much further ahead in the early daytime hours to have big fire growth and fire movement on the landscape. So the historic wind event that was mentioned that pushed those large fires multiple miles in an evening, it was basically on September 7th and 8th. It was a strong cold front that moved across Canada and pushed multiple fires, on the landscape well beyond what anybody would have ever thought. And there was power lines and things that came down that sparked other fires, as well as just created that very smoky, unhealthy conditions that we saw, poor visibility, over both sides of the Cascade or all along the Pacific Northwest. At the same time, we were having fires in California and large fires down there. So Northern California all the way up to the Canadian border was seeing, you know, very large fires and large fire growth. So predictive services, these predictive services, or outlooks as we call them, they come out every month, and they get put on by our National Interagency Fire Center, as well as our regional locations. So the Northwest Interagency Coordination Center put this out in concert with the national level folks out of Boise. And so it's updated every month, and you can find it online and kind of keep yourself educated as the season goes on how fire danger is looking, and seasonal drought, et cetera, is ongoing. So a good opportunity to take a look at that. As well as in this PowerPoint, you'll see a few of the links, and those links will be available, you know, as this presentation is being recorded. So this was issued in May. We're obviously most of the way through May. That being said, it's changed a little bit, but still representative of where we're at. This is the current snow water equivalent across the Pacific Northwest. We saw decent snowpack early on in the winter along the Cascades, but with the warm temperatures and lack of moisture lately, that snowpack has come off quite quickly. In the Deschutes Basin, we're averaging about 67% of normal at the moment. And as you see, most of Oregon is quite dry already thus far this year. This is the temperature outlook and rainfall outlook for June, July, and August of 2021. On the left is the temperature, and what we're seeing, or what's forecasted, you know, for the greater, you know, United States as well as Alaska, is above average temperatures. And then on the right shows the rainfall outlook. So the EC is equal chance or no forecast. The A is above, and what we're seeing in the Pacific Northwest is a below normal chance of moisture through June, July, and August. So that information, you know, gets populated in terms of fire danger or significant wildland fire danger throughout the year. And then this graph, or these pictures, and the writing on the side basically illustrates what June, July, and August is going to be. I did see a quick presentation earlier today that shows the forecasting for June. It's kind of a you know, preview of the next reporting period. And so you have June that has the bullseye right down the Cascades. I will say we're seeing quite a bit more red in what's going to be coming out for the June outlook. And then July, again, most of July, about 2/3 of Oregon becomes red. And then we see that basically continue into August. August shows quite a bit of Montana, all of Idaho, and that kind of plain states in a red fashion as well for this next reporting outlook. And that is supposed to stay basically June through September of Sisters Country and Central Oregon being in that red or above normal fire danger. As I mentioned, that outlet's going to pop out on June 1st. These are the links to it. So if you get this recording, you'll be able to snag those links, or you can take a snapshot as I get ready to flip with your camera. But you can find those online. If you just Google NWCC, it'll take you to our geographic area page, and then you can filter through Fire Outlook and pull up the information that I've been presenting. So this slide represents, you know, pre-suppression efforts in the upper left. We started suppressing fires 116 years ago when the Forest Service was established. So, you know, we used to see quite a bit of thinned out areas from, you know, low intensity fires burning along across the landscape that were left, you know, unmanaged, if you will. We also had native populations of indigenous folks that used wildfires to clean brush and get areas set up for crops, as well as just manage the forests in the areas that they lived in. The fire suppression for the last 116 years has led to kind of what we're seeing down here on the lower right frame, or lower left frame, excuse me, which is choked out, lots of underbrush, lots of smaller diameter trees that can grow into the canopy of the larger trees. Which leads us to, you know, these larger catastrophic fires that we've been seeing that are more crown replacing versus that low intensity that just burns the grass, the forbs, the underbrush, and leaves those larger diameter trees intact. With that fire suppression, we're seeing a lot of, the increased fires as the weather has changed and things are getting hotter and drier. You know, we've had our fires across the Sisters Country area that have been quite extensive. If you've been here for any amount of time, you can see how that's changed the landscape, as well as you've dealt with smoke and the social economic impacts that those have led to. You know, the picture on the bottom was the last time, you know, we had major evacuations in Sisters Country, as well as canceled numerous events prior to COVID cancellations. But that was the Millie fire. The two photos in the upper slide here are smoke and photos from Lion's Head and Beach last year. The photo on the right is down in Detroit, unfortunately. And as you know, as talked about by Doug Green, you know, we hadn't seen that large fire spread on the west side of the Cascades really ever. It's more of a rainforest, and the conditions that we saw last year were similar to the 1910 fires that burned through Idaho, Montana, and they saw large devastation in communities and towns wiped off the map, just as we did last summer. This slide here represents what we've seen in Sisters since 2002 on the Sisters Ranger District. It has every large fire that we've had over 100 acres on the Sisters Ranger District or Cascade Division. At this point, over 50% of the Sisters Ranger District has burned. A lot of those fires start up on the Cascade Crest and move down towards the populations. And so, you know, that's that piece that Chief Craig was mentioning, that they're willing to help and support us to come, you know, a little further out of town to tackle something if we're busy or we have multiple incidents going to keep those fires small and keep them from coming down towards town. Picture on the lower right, that's pretty much what's representative of what the Cascade Crest looks like. Pockets of green standing timber still up there, as well as heavy and large pockets of dead snags from previous fires on the landscape that actually pose a pretty big risk to our firefighters. The trees that are green generally don't fall over right away when a fire moves through the area, but the larger snags that are dead and have had fire in them already burn over quite quickly, just like wood in your fireplace. So you end up getting a really large aerial hazard threatening firefighters and any sort of fire suppression in the wilderness areas because of those snags. So what we're doing to mitigate, large wildfires or wildfires in general on the Sisters Ranger District Cascade Division is hazardous fuels management, forest restoration efforts, doing quite a bit of thinning, piling, pile burning, mowing and mastication, prescribed burning, we call it underburning, and that's where we do that landscape level like folks have seen. We've had quite a bit of opportunity this spring. We did cancel any sort of prescribed burning during COVID, i.e. last prescribed fire season. And this year we had several good weather windows to initiate prescribed fire back on the landscape in Sisters Country. We actually had a few record days of largest amount of acres we've been able to pull off or burn in a particular burn period or day. We did over 300 acres just southwest of town this spring and had a very productive spring. Roughly, we're over about 1,000 acres thus far for the spring, which general target you'll see popping up here. It has been roughly about 680 acres, and we're now pushing roughly 1,500-ish acres over the last 4 years. That's basically been, you know, 131% increase since that 2008 to 2017 time period of that 680 acre average. And historically, you know, 75% of our burn program was in the WUI, and at this point for the last 4 years, 100% of that effort's been in that wildland urban interface to protect homes and values at risk that we care so much about. With that, you know, the idea is to buffer from the WUI or the infrastructure, you know, town, and then work our way out into the forest to basically not be fighting fire on the doorsteps of folks' homes as fires come out of the wilderness. The overall intent is to continue in that center point and work our way out and keep those treatments further and further out so that we get that low intensity fire and not that large catastrophic fire coming towards town. These treatments here, this map is what we were working on this spring. Everything red on the map was spring work, and we've accomplished all of that but this area of Highway 20 or Indian Ford at the junction of the 11 Road and Highway 20 just south of Black Butte proper. Everything else we capitalized, you know, this spring, and then the yellowish or orangish color is that fall work that's planned, and most of our fall work is planned there in the Metolius Basin. This is just a few quick slides of what that treatment looks like. You know, we go in initially and thin and masticate, so we mow the brush down, we thin the trees out. That's about a 2 to 3 year look at what that the veg type looks like. Then we go in and burn after we do that thinning and mastication, and that's about 2 to 3 years after that thinning and mastication happens. So you see an area of underburning on that picture below. 6 to 12 months post underburn, this is what it generally looks like. You have those red needles on the lower levels of the trees. That's intentional. We are trying to raise that canopy base height to allow that low intensity fire to burn through here and not get into the crowns of the trees so that the trees stay resilient to any sort of wildfires. Picture below is 2 years post underburn, so you get a lot of that green up, all the the brown or the dead needles fall off, and then all you see is just a little bit of the charring on the bark, that's left in a particular treatment area. The slide just shows a few of those operations that I just mentioned, happening in the woods. And then some of the other mitigation efforts that we're doing is fire prevention and education with our prevention technicians. We work with Project Wildfire, Fire-Rise communities, local and regional events, team teaching, where we would go in and work with the school children. That's all been postponed due to COVID, but we hope to get back into that operation as COVID lessens. Quite a bit of public information and messaging through social media accounts, Twitter, Facebook, Central Oregon Fire. Gives you live updates, local news and radio, and then we work really closely with Deschutes County Public Health and Oregon Department of Forestry for smoke management. Cohesive strategy is another big thing that we talk about, and that's basically working together with all of our federal, state, and local partners to allow fire to burn on the landscape and be resilient, to buffer our communities. And make things safer for folks as wildfires are part of that natural process on the landscape. And then just a quick snapshot on that cohesive strategy piece. You know, it does create those resilient landscapes, fire adapted communities, and a safe, effective, risk-based wildland fire response from all agencies that have bought into that. And that's a national level effort. So I'll leave it at that unless there's questions. I know there's a question period at the end. CentralOregonFire.org, what I mentioned earlier, and here's the link for that, and you'll be able to get that off the recorded PowerPoint at the end if you so choose. That gives you real-time text messages to your phone regarding prescribed fire as well as wildfires. And I will pass it back to either Julie or Chief Craig. Thanks.
Thanks, James. So with that, I think we're going to move to our volunteer prevention chair, that is Heather Miller, and she's going to talk for a few minutes about prevention efforts.
All right, thanks, Julie. I think the next slide is on FireFree stuff. We can move that on. All right, so yeah, my name is Heather Miller. I'm a volunteer with the Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District. I work with prevention and public education messaging, and wanted to share with you about some of the resources that are available to help with mitigating wildfire in your area. So one of the big projects that is around is FireFree. It's a program that was developed in Central Oregon in the mid-90s to really educate and empower homeowners to do their part to reduce wildfire risk. And so that was really after the Aubrey Hall fire and skeleton fires that happened in Bend. So there is an event going on right now. It started last Saturday in our area for Sisters at the Northwest Transfer Station out on Friar Road. From May 22nd, last Saturday, until June 5th, when the transfer station is open, you can bring your yard debris down for free and dispose of it. And so the hours for the transfer station, they're open Wednesday through Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. There's the address there at 68200 Friar Road. You can bring grass clippings, brush, prunings, pine needles, pine cones, weeds, all that kind of stuff, just nothing larger than 12 inches in diameter. That debris is run through a grinder, and so they need to make sure that the pieces of wood are small enough to run through that grinder. And just make sure that your loads don't have sod or dirt, rocks, trash, that sort of thing. The waste management folks use that debris to cover at the main dump site out east, and so they need to have that stuff clean for that process. So you know, the FireFree program is a partnership with solid waste management folks, and then our local fire departments and fire agencies work with them on helping coordinate that event. This year we're out there handing out information and just cheering people on. Usually we're out there helping with unloading, and unfortunately with COVID we are not able to do that this year, and we're disappointed about that, but just really want to encourage everybody to take advantage of the program. You can dump your yard debris any time of the year. It's just when it's not fire free, then they charge $4 a yard to do that. So just really encourage everybody to take advantage of that. Let's get that combustible debris off your property, and that way you're not having to burn it yourself. So keeping everything nice and safe that way, and just bring it on out to the transfer site and they'll take care of it from there. So next slide, Julie. So I also wanted to share some of the other resources that are available that I thought might be useful to folks with taking that step to be prepared for wildfire season. And there's some links here that you can jot down, and I was going to go over some of those websites for part of my presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to show you what those websites look like. So, do that. And so this page is the firefree.org website. And so you can go here anytime and find out when the events for FireFree are happening. And they also have links for the steps that you can take as a homeowner to protect your home, and just look at what you've got around to help keep things safe. And then there's also a link here for fire resistant plants. So, you know, when you're protecting your home, it doesn't have to be a moonscape. You can landscape and make things look really nice, but just use plantings near the home that are, they're not fireproof, but they're more resistant to fire. And so you can have that nice landscape, but protect your home at the same time. And so there's just some nice links and information on there that's it's been developed locally through the Central Oregon region.
Hey, Heather, sorry to interrupt you, Heather, but we cannot see your screen.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, there. So,
I know Julie made you a presenter, but for some reason we can't see your screen.
here, let's try this. How's that?
Getting it helps. Yep, that's better.
Awesome, cool, all right. So anyway, here's the firefree.org. And so you can go through the links at the top, look for your events. Here's the recommended steps that you can take to help protect your home. Fire resistant plant link that's developed through Oregon State University. And so it's local plants, which is great. And then just questions that you may have about taking those steps. Another great link, something that James had brought up, was the Central Oregon Fire Information website. If you go to centraloregonfire.org, then there is a link on here for signing up for text alerts and email alerts. If there's a prescribed fire that's going to happen nearby, or even if there's a wildfire, then they'll be able to give you those alerts. And so just a really great tool that's out there. They're always posting any of the public information that's going on, you know, see these announcements about when they're doing prescribed fires and that sort of thing. So you can go to that website, and hopefully that's helpful for you. We also have our Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office has gotten very involved with helping folks plan for living in the wildland urban interface, which, you know, if we've got homes near or in the forest, that's you. So, so they've got some great information here on just when you're living in that area, how to be a responsible homeowner and be prepared. They've got tips on backyard burning, if that's what you choose to do. But certainly, we always encourage people to do the chip and compost and hauling if possible. They've got some other great information here. They've got a link here that takes you to the FireWise page for NFPA for preparing your home for wildfire. And then some important stuff for preparing for the season is understanding the evacuation levels for the state, and just being prepared for if that might happen in our area. So just a reminder that we have our ready, set, go levels, our green level 1, just being aware that danger exists, and that's, you know, really kind of starting now for us in our area. Just to start thinking about that. Level 2 being set, just being ready to leave if there's a fire in the area, and then certainly level 3, go now, leave immediately. And so we've got some great links here for what those levels are, and then how to prepare a go kit if you had to evacuate, what types of things you need to think about taking with you, and either having a list or having some of those things packed already, and what that might entail. So ready.gov has a really good website for that. And you can get that link through the State Fire Marshal's websites. Another great site, Oregon State Extension Service has brought out a fire program. And one of the great things that they've done is started doing webinars on fire preparation. And so if you go to the bottom of their page, they've got this Fire Aware, Be Prepared webinar series, and they've got all these recordings here that you can go through to learn more about being prepared and what you can do around your home. Talking about fire behavior and home ignition zones and all that kind of stuff. So some great information there from OSU. And then the last one I wanted to talk about was Deschutes County has a reverse 911 alert system. With so many folks going away from landlines for a phone system and using cell phones instead, this is a way to sign up to let the county know that you have a cell phone and that cell phone is tied to your address. And so if you go to those Deschutes alerts, you can click on a link here, and you have to set up your own account and put in your address, and you put in your cell phone number. And if there's an emergency in your area, then 911 can call you. If you have a landline, that happens automatically. That information has already been provided. But with so many different cell phone carriers and that sort of thing, the information's just too broad out there. And so the county is requesting that if folks are using a cell phone for their primary communication, that they sign up for this Everbridge Deschutes alerts, and that way, if there's an emergency in your area, then they can contact you to do that. So those are the things I wanted to share with everyone. If there are no questions, then I will plan on handing this back over to Julie. And there's a website information there if you want to jot it down. And thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, Heather. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Beverly Halkin. She's also a volunteer with the Fire District. She is the Fire Corps Chair, and she's going to talk to you about some of their projects.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. The Fire Corps members are volunteers that help the Fire District with different programs such as teaching CPR, doing car seats, many other programs. If you want to see what kind of programs we do, you can go to the Sisters Fire website, and they list the different programs as well as volunteer opportunities to join the Fire Corps. One of the programs we offer is the Wildfire Home Assessment. The Fire Corps will schedule a time to come out and evaluate the external conditions of your home with you and the surrounding property to determine the susceptibility to wildfire and what actions as you, the homeowner, can take to make your home more defensible and help prevent the spread of wildfire. This is a copy of a report we give to you that goes over the listing of the suggestions that we had, and then we show you a picture of what we have. For example, you can see some debris in a corner. We will suggest to you to clean that up because that's a place that embers are susceptible to get into there and start a wildfire. And we also talk to the homeowner about making an evacuation checklist that can help them if they are evacuated. So to get a home assessment, you can go onto the website, the Sisters Fire website, and you can register to sign up for one, and then we'll schedule the appointment with you. Another important program that we offer is the address signs. An address sign on your home is most likely not visible to the fire district personnel trying to find your home. Not only during a wildfire, but also in a medical emergency, not being able to find your home could delay life-saving help. So the Fire Corps volunteers will install a reflective address sign and mounting post at the beginning of the driveway or common access road to properly identify your residence from the street. There's a $20 fee for the address signs. It's just for the materials. Everybody has volunteers, so they come out and do it for free. If you're interested, like I said, you can go to the Sisters Fire website. You can sign up both for the Wildfire Home Assessment, and you can also sign up for the address sign program. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Bev. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to our Fire Safety Manager, Doug Green, to talk about state and regional wildfire efforts.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. I'm not going to go into a great deal on this. I just wanted to kind of give everyone a heads up that there is a lot of wheels turning at the different levels of government regarding wildfire mitigation at state, county, and city levels. Last year, there was a number of wildfire bills that were being proposed at Senate level that kind of ended up being left on the table when a number of the lawmakers walked out of the Capitol due to some other reasons. And so none of that wildfire bill did not get voted on or reviewed adequately and was kind of left sitting there without a vote on it. Then we had the fires last fall, and obviously, as you can imagine, there was a lot more momentum being pushed by all sides that we need to get something done at the state level. As we all know, voluntary work toward communities and homes is great and is super effective, but there also needs to be regulations and standards on how and where people can build if they're going to be building in a wildfire hazard zone. And that's what a lot of states, including Oregon and most of the Western states, are grappling with right now, trying to balance private property rights with the rights of keeping people and firefighters and the economy safe and stable. So at the state level this spring, there was a number of different bills that were introduced. They were kind of all combined into one bill called Senate Bill 762, I think it is, which is a real comprehensive, far-reaching bill. It has some similarities with some of the bills down in California. A number of things it would do would require the state to map the entire state in terms of the different wildfire hazard zones. It would propose building regulations for any new structure in those wildfire hazard zones, create standards for defensible space. It would require electric companies to come up with wildfire mitigation plans for how they're going to keep their power lines, et cetera, from sparking fires. So it's this real broad-reaching plan that, for the most part, most fire districts and other fire personnel support. So we'll see where it goes from here, but just let you know that in Salem at the state level, there's a big push to come out with something, because we know we're behind the 8 ball here, and more needs to be done, not only at the suppression level and getting these forests mitigated, but also at the community level with planning and home hardening and fire resistive type landscaping. So that's at the state level. At Deschutes County level, they've been kind of tackling this also. I'm not going to go into detail on it, but a couple of years ago, there was some bills put out there that the county had the ability to adopt if they wanted, that would require some home hardening measures. The county has kind of put that on hold for a little bit to see what happens at the state level. And the same with the City of Sisters. The City of Sisters is very progressive and definitely wants to make the community wildfire resilient. And they're proposing a few things, but again, everyone's kind of waiting to see what comes down from the state level, because not only is that going to give us some traction and some direction on what to do, it also may be some funding with it and some resources we can use to make our job easier and to make it fit what's going on at the state level. So I just kind of wanted to let everyone know there is a lot of movement. We're waiting to see what happens, but I think everyone agrees that something needs to happen, especially after last fall's fires. And I think what comes out of Salem will be at least a good start to addressing this huge and expensive wildfire issue. So that's probably as deep as I'm going to go with it right now. Hopefully we'll know more this fall as, again, things come out of Salem. That's really all I have right now. I think we covered a lot of material in a short amount of time, and I appreciate all the presenters and everyone who's out there. Are there any questions or follow-ups or comments that did not get put in the chat box by anybody? You can either probably raise your hand. Again, the lower left-hand screen, there's a hand button. If you have anything, we will pick on you.
I don't think there
Okay.
is there actually a raising hand button on this platform?
Well, there is on mine.
Okay.
I see a little hand.
Okay.
But if you don't have a hand button, you can put it in the chat, or you can just unmute your thing and speak up. But I don't see anybody who's chomping at the bit with anything. We must have covered everything really, really well, or confused everyone.
Doug, do you want to cover whether or not we will email this presentation out or a link to it?
Yep. So Yeah, it's a great question, Julie, or great comment. We are recording this because we know we had a number of homeowners and organizations that weren't able to get on this tonight for various reasons. So we're recording this. I'm going to push it out to the different homeowner associations and community members out there who are interested in it, and then we can have some. They can follow up after that. Again, I think, as most of you know, Central Oregon is very progressive in how we're looking at wildfire mitigation. We've done a lot of work. Our federal and state partners have done a ton of work. And compared to a lot of parts of the country, we are ahead of the 8 ball in a lot of ways in terms of how we're working on a community scale for wildfire mitigation. But as you all know, there is a lot still to do. And we really, really, really rely on the homeowners, the private property folks, the business owners, and the communities around here to really help us do what we do. Because if a fire gets in our community, the fire department and the state and federal agencies can only do so much. And so we're trying to keep it out of neighborhoods where our hands really become tied. So that's all I have. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Feel free to follow up with me or any one of our presenters if you have any other questions or need some follow-up on anything. And that's a wrap. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye.